the this is the continuation of an earlier topic where I was trying to teach you about the characteristics of life, and I'm sure most of you guys uh, m- might be able to grab the concept which I wanted on the day, that life at a molecular level, what life means. And if I try to summarize the 30 minutes talk on the other day about the concept and the difference of difference between the living things and the non-living things, uh, in one summary, in one important line you should remember about that thing is that life is about the a balance. Life is about a balance between different chemical reactions. So there are a lot of chemical reactions going on out there, and all those chemical reactions are present in sync. And as long as the balance is maintained between all those chemical reactions, we can consider that stuff as a living thing. Apart from that basic definition, I talked about the basic features of life, including feeding, movement, respiration, excretion, growth, sensitivity, and last but not the least, the reproduction. These things define how we able to distinguish between the living things and the non-living things. General understanding is quite simple. If you can see somebody moving, if you can see somebody growing, you can guess that that stuff is a living thing. But we can see an aeroplane is moving as well. We can see a car is moving as well. So these things can be considered as living. The answer is no, because uh, it is like a package of having multiple things at the same time. A car can move from one place to another. There is no doubt about it. We used to feed the car as well, but car is not an independent, sustainable system, and the car is not able to reproduce itself as well. So there are a lot of things, a lot of characteristics of life which are not there in the car. So we do not consider car or aeroplanes as living. And of course, they do breathe as well, and they react. So all these things I have talked about earlier. And last but not the least, that was the reproduction. And I wanted you guys to think about the reproduction in a very greater context, in a bigger picture, in a bigger context. Think about having the concept of evolution, that life is about balancing the chemical reactions, and life do not want to compromise that balance. Life do everything to maintain that balance, everything, literally everything, to keep that balance. That means as long as living things are able to sustain the balance, they will going to be, we should consider them living. And the difference between a living person and a dead person is that the body of the dead person is failed to sustain the balance between all those chemical reactions. So we do everything, whatever we can, in order to sustain the balance between those chemical reactions. And if, for example, in terms of evolution, evolution try to make living things better and better and better, but evolution never find any answer against the fundamental aspect which is called as the death. यानी कि evolution ने हमें complexity दी है. Evolution made us more complex, better, and we able to do things in a better way. But with all those billions of years of evolution, life has failed to find the answer of death. So sooner or later, every living thing is supposed to be dead, one way or another. So that means whatever the complicated things the living system has acquired over the period of time will going to finish on one day. That means all the efforts of evolution will be gone once the living thing is not there. So how about securing that information so that that information can be passed on to someone else? So nature has evolved the current version of DNA. the genetic material we are carrying, which is securing and saving all the informations of the living things. So all the characteristics of the living thing are installed, are written in terms with the help of some codes on the DNA. And that DNA is preserved in the living system, and that DNA is used as a storage material for the secrets of life. So whatever the life is evolving is saved in terms of DNA. The next thing is that every life, sooner or later, will going to lose the balance, will be dead. So evolution gave living things a chance. But how about forwarding that precious information to another generation? And that's what we call as reproduction. So you will see that the reproduction do has to have a very special agenda, is about living larger than life. So I will be able to live in my son. My genes will going to live in my son, and I might be able to live larger than life. So all the information about life which is present in my DNA will going to be passed on to the next generation. And whether we like it or not, nature pushed living things, knowingly or unknowingly, consciously or unconsciously, to transfer that information to the next generation. And that's what we call as reproduction. आपने जितने हार्मोन सुने हैं जो अपील करते हैं, जो पुश करते हैं अपोजिट जेंडर में अट्रैक्शन पैदा करने के लिए, they have an evolutionary purpose. It's a trigger, it's a push, so that the information which you are carrying might not be lost in the ruins of time. It should be transferred to the next generation. Okay? And please feel free, if you guys want to, stop me, want me to speak, or want you guys to speak, want me to speak on something else, please, I request you guys. It's very difficult to stay alert and active, online. So if you guys just want to speak something, speak out. Okay? अगर आप बोलना चाहते हैं तो आप मुझे इंटरप्ट कर सकते हैं, मुझे कोई फर्क नहीं पड़ता. वो हमारे यहाँ लोग होता है ना कि मेरा लेक्चर इंटरप्ट हो गया, मेरा कोई कुछ नहीं होता इससे. सारी उम्र यही काम किया है, अगर अभी भी लेक्चर डिस्ट्रैक्ट होता है तो फिर हमें कोई और काम करना चाहिए टीचिंग के अलावा. ठीक है? सो प्लीज फील फ्री. आई वुड लव टू टेक योर पॉइंट्स. और अगर आपके दिमाग में कोई बात आती है, you want to speak about something which I am talking, and you might have a better combination of sentences, please feel free to speak. Okay? So when we want to confirm that something is living or non-living, we can ask certain questions to ourselves. So first, something else have does something else have to make it? There are some questions, whether it is made by itself, it is made by someone else. Aeroplanes are not living because it is made by someone else. क्या कोई और चीज उसको मूव करती है? Someone else is pushing or a reason of the movement, like the waves are moving, but the primary reason behind the waves are the wind. The thing is, which is not living anymore, they are also considered as the dead or the non-living. Something which was survived, which once living but not living anymore, these things are also considered as the non-living things biologically. But I can tell you, whether we like it or not, there are many living people out there who are not living. They consider themselves dead, although they are living. They believe that they have no life out there. There is no charm in life. There is no motivation in life. They are also considered as dead, according to my understanding. Okay? If you find such people, help them to feel that they are living. Okay? The most characteristics and important thing biologically you should remember and know, and I might be asking about it, that every living thing is made up of cells. And the various parts of the cells, they perform different functions. Every living thing is made up of cells. That's a very important point. They uptake things, they get the food, they excrete the waste product, they produce energy, they communicate. They means cells. They inherit genetic material, they pass on the genetic material, and they do move as well. Let me make a statement for you guys, and I request you to remember this thing for a longer period of time. And that statement is that every living thing is made up of cells, and cells are the structural and functional unit of every living thing. Cells are the structural and functional unit of every living thing. ये बहुत important statement. It's like a primary statement about life. What that mean? When I says that cells are the structural unit of life, that means every form of life is made up of cells. Whether the life is in the form of plants, whether the life is in the form of animals, humans, or insects, or bacteria. So in whatever the type of life is out there is made up of cells. That's the first basic definition. The second thing is that when I says life, cells are the functional unit of life as well. So that means that whatever we are doing at an organism level is actually executed by the cells at a cellular level. So cells are not only making the structure, the cells are also responsible for the functions of the living organism as well. So let me explain this thing a little bit more. For example, we are feeding, we are eating, we are taking the food because the cells are required to be fed. They are required to take the food as well. We are excreting the waste materials. We are releasing the toxic materials because the cells are releasing the toxic materials. We are inhaling oxygen from the air to produce energy because the cells require oxygen to execute the process of respiration. So one way or another, whatever we are doing at an organism level, those functions are executed at a cellular level as well. So that defines the cells are the structural and the functional unit of the living things. Hope this is understandable. The living things, they do have a potential to maintain the balance, and that is what we call as homeostasis. It's a very important characteristics of the living things. It's a very important term, homeostasis. It's about keeping the balance. As long as living things are able to maintain the balance, balance means balance between chemical reactions. That means balance. Let me help Zunair to mute his mic. I think Zunair को पता नहीं है, सुबह सुबह का टाइम में नींद होती है. Zunair कोई बात नहीं, खैर है, मामा से डांट पड़ी होगी उसको. वो समझ रही होगी मेरा मुंडा पढ़ने है, चला ऑनलाइन क्लास ले रहा है, कोई शोर ना करे और आप लोग आराम एंजॉय कर सकते हैं. Or let me, okay. So homeostasis means it's about the ability of living things to keep the balance. Keep the balance of what? The balance of chemical reactions, keeping the balance of temperature, the balance of water. So balance of internal conditions. It's quite complicated, but keeping the balance is what allows the chemical reactions to perform or to to proceed without any trouble. That's what we call as homeostasis. For मैंने इसकी एक example दी थी आपको last time कि if you go to a colder place and the outside temperature is like 4 degrees centigrade or 5 degrees centigrade, your internal body temperature is 37 degrees centigrade, and it is required to be maintained at 37 degrees centigrade. And that temperature is absolutely necessary because all the metabolic chemical reactions are optimized to execute at 37 degrees centigrade. So if your body temperature goes up, your body temperature goes down, this is not nice. That's going to disrupt the chemical reactions, metabolic chemical reactions. That means it will going to make you sick. And if it is disturbed a lot, that will going to create an irreversible damage to the chemical reactions going on within our body, and the balance might be lost and the person might be dead. So your outside temperature is 4 degrees centigrade, the body temperature is 37 degrees centigrade. According to the simple laws of physics, what should happen? The heat from our body should be transferred to the outside. So the heat should flow from our body to the outside unless the temperature of both the bodies should be same. So हमारी body का temperature भी कितना हो जाना चाहिए? Should be 4. If we are like staying outside at a 4 degree centigrade, but that is a death, warrant for the body. Changing temperature of the body for a couple of degrees means trouble, and for few degrees means death. So what our body is doing at that time, we are using clothes to keep ourselves warm. That's the one thing we are doing. But in addition to that, our body is doing a lot of things. One of the things is that our body stops the blood supply to the skin cells, to the face, to the cheeks, and to the open parts of our body, because these are colder portions which are physically connected with the environment. So less blood is supplied to those portions so that it should not get cold, does not bring the cold from the environment inside to the inside part of the body. The next thing, if your arteries, the diameter of your arteries shrinks, the diameter of your arteries shrink, that decreases the diameter of your arteries, your blood flows within your arteries with more friction, and that increases more heat right from the inside of your body to help you to maintain the temperature at 37 degrees centigrade. And last but not the least, if you fail to maintain your temperature, your body started shivering. The process of shivering means your body pushes your muscles to move so that it execute some functions. ATP is generated, energy is generated, and that energy is utilized to keep the body temperature at 37 degrees centigrade. So we're never able to understand our body is doing a lot of things in order to keep the temperature of our body. Sardi lagna, garmi lagna, all these things are, they do have a biological reasons. And if I can tell you, there are more things. When your body is depleted from nutrients, your metabolic chemical reactions need more supplies of ingredients and nutrients. So our brain and our body created a situation which we call as hunger. हमें भूख लगती है. And that is an indirect signal and message that there is not enough nutrients and components to execute the chemical reactions, so kuch khaएं. And similarly, when there is not enough water within our body, आपको प्यास लगती है. So all these functions which you are executing, they do have a biological meaning behind that. Okay, so I'm reading the question from Fazam for the rest of the students. सर अगर सबको टेम्परेचर बैलेंस रखना होता है तो फिर कुछ लोग तो विंटर में भी जैकेट्स नहीं पहनते कि हमें सर्दी नहीं लग रही. ऐसा क्यों होता है? इट्स अ डिफरेंस इन आवर एबिलिटी टू डील विद द बैलेंस. जैसे वी आर डिफरेंट फॉर डिफरेंट रीजंस. देयर आर सम पीपल हु आर, और ये सवाल मैं अक्सर अपने आप से पूछता था व्हेन आई वाज इन कोरिया. The temperature was -20, the -15, something like that. So genetically, some people are evolved in a way that they can maintain or absorb, their body can maintain the temperature at a lower, even at a very lower temperature comfortably as compared to other people. तो मैं कहता था यार ये लोग पागल हैं यार, इतनी सर्दी में और हमारी तो जान कुल्फी जम गई है, हमारी. And they are like comfortable with simple clothes as well at -5, -7. So they are genetically different than us. But इन लोगों का अलग प्रॉब्लम होता है. एंड व्हाट इज द अदर प्रॉब्लम ऑफ द अदर साइड इज दैट अब वही कोरियंस होते जब गर्मी आती थी उनकी शक्लें देखने वाले होती थी, पसीने से बुरा हाल. और इवन एट 30 डिग्री सेंटीग्रेड दे आर टॉकिंग अबाउट कि मर गए गर्मी से. 30 डिग्री सेंटीग्रेड तबाह बर्बाद होगी जिंदगी हमारी, इतनी गर्मी पड़ी. एंड वी आर, जो लोग की गर्मी वाले हैं, वी आर ऑल फाइन, वी आर चिल एट दैट टाइम के यार ये क्या है, ये तो पागल है. So we are structurally genetically different. That is why we able to cope different things in different ways. Okay, ये वही इसी तरह का क्वेश्चन है कि some people they do eat a lot and it does not go into their body. उनका जिस्म जो है वो वैसे के वैसे रहता है. They are not, they never develop enough mass and fats. On the other hand, the other people वो थोड़ी सी बेहतियाती करे खाने पीने की, वो एकदम से मोटे होने शुरू हो जाते हैं. There are genetical reasons behind these things, and I will explain maybe somehow sooner or later genes and DNA में about these things as well. Shabash, good. Thank you very much for your question. I will, ये chat में संभाल के रखता होता हूँ सारी, and your conversations as well. Sir. Next is that the life is.
Sir, there is another question.
Shabash.
Sir, actually, we were talking about the. You were saying about the hunger.
जी जी
हंगर के
राहिम
बारे में बात कर रहे थे आपके. When we feel that we are lacking nutrients, the body sends the signal that we should eat. So isn't it the situation with what is the situation with the people who are having the sleeping disorder, eating disorder actually, that they eat a lot even though they do not need to, or soon after eating session they want to eat more after some time. So
yes
what's
yes it's
the
a
situation with them?
yes of course it's a difficult problem and the answer is the same जो मैंने पहले बताया कि there are a lot of things we can explain based on our genetics, based on the difference on our genetics, and that's a very common reason for trouble between many people. Some people just always feel hungry, they always feel hungry, and the other people, they are not, they can live without food for a longer period of time. It depends on a lot of other factors as well, of course on the stress, of course on your living conditions, but genetically do it has a reason. We are different, so that means the genetic code which is defining our structure and our properties, we have difference in that genetic code, and that difference allows us to use our abilities in different capacities. So some people are wonderful in these things, some people, it's like a diversity in hunger. So what I am telling you is a general concept that when we feel deprived of certain nutrients, we feel hunger. That's a general understanding. Most of the time it happens. Some people do have that whenever they just, for example, मैं आपको बताता हूँ, some people when they have depletion in the level of nutrients like from 100% to 50%, they started feeling hunger. Their hunger signal, triggered. On the other hand, some people, when the level of nutrition goes down to 20%, this is the time when their hunger signal at that time it triggered. So the people who have triggered their hunger signal at the 50% level, they will feel hungry sooner than as compared to the other people. So that is the difference in our genetics, and that's make us different. There are certain things we cannot get rid of. I will tell you, about, and I will explain you in the genes and DNA in the upcoming slides about it. Okay. So organisms are of two types. The one they are like they called as unicellular. The other ones they are multicellular. The unicellular organisms are the ones which are made up of one cell, like bacteria, like protists. Protists is a sort of category of unicellular organisms. The organisms which are made up of one cell only. Imagine a cell and a life as well. So unicellular organisms made up of one cell, they are called as unicellular. And the other organisms which are made up of lots of cells, they are called as multicellular. For example, humans. When all the life forms which you can see, all of them are made up of so many cells. They are multicellular. But there are some cells, there are some organisms which are made up of only one cell. And I will try to help you guys to see those animals or organisms which are made up of one cell only. And I just gave you an example that monkey is made up of a lot of cells, so that is why monkey is supposed to be multicellular organisms. The protist, on the other hand, it's the name of the category. Remember, protist is not the name of any organism. It's the name of a category. At this time, you don't need to remember what that categories are, but just remember it's a kind of category of organisms which comprises the organisms made up of one cell only. Okay. The next thing is that's very interesting and very important. And that is that what type of cells are out there? There are two types of cells present in the living system. I want you guys to please remember the original, mantra. The cells are the basic structure and functional unit of living organism. So we need to know more about the cells if we want to know about the functions of the organism. We need to know more about the cells. There are two types of cells present out there. One of the cell is called as eukaryotic cells. The other type of cell is called as the prokaryotic cells. The prokaryotic cells are the primitive ones. Please keep these things which I'm telling you. The prokaryotic cells are the primitive ones. They evolved earlier. They are simpler. The eukaryotic cells, on the other hand, they are advanced type of cells And most of the life forms which you are able to see, they are made up of eukaryotic cells. So plants are made up of eukaryotic cells. We are made up of eukaryotic cells. The insects are made up of birds, reptiles, and whatever the organism you are able to see, they are all made up of eukaryotic cells. The prokaryotic cells, they are simpler. They are simpler and primitive, and most of the time they create unicellular organisms. So that means just they are made up of unicellular organisms, single cell organisms. You can find a lot of differences in the upcoming. This is like an ongoing topic. Abhi ke liye jitna chahiye main utna bata raha hu, okay? As a starter, you should know that every cell is made up of, it contains DNA, the genetic information. Now you might be able to figure out that what is the role of genetic material in the living system? What is the role of genetic material in the system? The genetic material or the DNA is a file, is a code which contains all the secrets of life. And that code is present in the prokaryotic cells openly without having an enclosed compartment. But in case of eukaryotic system, the DNA or the genetic material is present in a closed chamber or a closed compartment. And that compartment is called as the nucleus. So in eukaryotic cells, there is a nucleus. In prokaryotic cells, there is no nucleus. So that's the most basic definition which you can use if somebody asks you what is the difference between eukaryotic cells and prokaryotic cells at this time. The eukaryotic cells, they have a defined nucleus. The prokaryotic cells, they don't have a defined nucleus. So अगर इसको ज़्यादा समझने की कोशिश करें, that means the eukaryotic cells have their genetic material or DNA enclosed in a compartment called the nucleus. While in case of prokaryotic cells, the genetic material is suspended within the nucleus, is present within the cells. There is no nucleus in the prokaryotic system.
Sir?
G.
Sir, जो प्रोकैरियोटिक होते हैं उसके अंदर बस एक ही सेल बैलेंस मेंटेन करते हैं केमिकल रिएक्शंस का.
ओके, किसने ये सवाल पूछा? इट्स अ गुड क्वेश्चन. किसने पूछा है? मैं आपके सवाल को मुश्किल कर देता हूँ. मैं आपके सवाल को मुश्किल कर देता हूँ because it might lead to a difficult concept. I am complicating her question. In a unicellular organism, one organism is a cell as well as it's an organism. In case of multicellular organism, which is made up of large number of cells, that is a cell, but that is not an organism, because the organism is made up of large number of cells. So in case of an organism which is made up of one cell, that one cell should supposed to be complicated, because it is not only serving the purpose of a cell, but is also serving the purpose of an organism as well. It needs to move, it needs to survive, it needs to communicate with the environment, it needs to breathe, it needs to create energy, it needs to excrete. All these things are supposed to be done by one cell. So in case of unicellular organism, one cell is supposed to be more complex because it's have to do all the jobs of the organism as well. Now think about the multicellular organism. The multicellular organism, which are made up of so many cells, the cells can choose to distribute the work between them. The cells can choose. जी जी.
सर जिस तरह अभी आपने कहा था कि वो जल्दी इवॉल्व करते हैं तो वो सिंपलर होते हैं, लेकिन अभी आप कह रहे हैं कि वो क्योंकि डिफरेंट फंक्शन उन्होंने परफॉर्म करने होते हैं तो वो ज़्यादा कॉम्प्लेक्स होते हैं. तो ये
मैं बताता हूँ. मैंने जो बोला था वो ये था कि प्रोकैरियोटिक सेल्स आर प्रिमिटिव. वो पहले आए हैं. दे आर सिंपलर ऑर्गेनिज्म. अभी मैं कॉम्प्लेक्सिटी बताता हूँ आपको. दे आर सिंपलर. मैं अपनी बात पे कायम हूँ. दे आर सिंपलर. बट when an organism is unicellular, that means it's a one cell as well as it's a complete organism. So it have to perform all the functions of life as well, but it requires to have a tail in order to move in water. It needs to evolve things which are required to execute the function of organism as well. The one thing. But the things and the chemical reactions and the complexity in the structures is not there. They are using energy from the basic means. They are doing things and executing chemical action at a very basic. Okay, so let me complete the story, finish the answer. So when an organism is made up of one cell, that means it's a cell. It's a cell, that one cell, as well as it requires to execute the function of life as an organism as well. So it needs to have some additional things, some additional function. But the chemical reactions are very basic. The life forms are very basic. Now think about the eukaryotic cells, the advanced version of cells, and the multicellular organism, and feel how complexity arises. The complexity arises when the different cells started living together. And when different cells started living together, they make multicellular organisms. And they divide their job. They divide their job. When they divide their job, one type of cells are required to execute only one type of functions. The other type of cells, they are required to execute other type of functions only. Third type of cells are required to execute third type of functions. But in totality, as an organism, they able to execute much advanced and complicated functions because of this division of labor. The multicellular organism, there is a division of labor, and that allows the multicellular organisms to do things, to do wonders. Think about yourself. We are made up of different types of cells. Our eyes are made up of cells. Our skin is made up of cells. Our heart is made up of cells. But all those cells, they are different from each other, but they are like, their structures are different, their jobs are different. They cannot live independently as one cell. अगर आप स्किन के सेल को बाहर निकाल दें, मर जाएगा. हार्ट के सेल्स को बाहर निकाल के रख दें, मर जाएगा. They will not be able to live as one cell. It can only execute one thing, but in totality, in together, they create complicated functions. And that complexity is because of their ability to execute their chemical reactions in complicated ways. So we will talk more on these two things in the upcoming chapters, especially when we study cell structures. I will going to teach you more about the difference. But the basic difference you should remember, the prokaryotic ones, simpler, primitive, and they are made up of, they don't have a defined nucleus. Eukaryotic cells, advanced, complicated, and they have a defined nucleus. That means their genetic material is enclosed in a chamber. Living things can respond to the environment as well. For example, they can respond to the stimulus as well. Even the plants can respond. आपने सुना होगा, for example, in case of a plant you might remember, which is able to capture the insects and the birds and small flies and small insects. They can capture, and they do sense the presence of an insect on their surface. The capturing or eating of that insect helps the plants to grow better, because the bird is able to, the bird is carrying a lot of nutrients, and when it trapped within the mouth of that plant, it decays, destroys, decomposes, and creating a lot of wonderful nutrients for the plants, and plants can grow better. So there are plants who can eat the insect like this. आपने movies में सुना होगा. And you also remember, आपने सुना होगा छुई मुई का पौधा, जिसको अंग्रेजी में mimosa plant. When you touch it actually started wilting. So it can also sense not only the animals, but some of the plants, they do have the potential to sense the signals from outside their structures. Shoots, they can respond to the lights towards the direction of light, and this is called phototropism. भूल जाए तो वैसे खैर है, लेकिन अगर याद रहे तो क्या ही बात है. Phototropism means towards the light, love of light. So they move towards the light. Roots, they grow towards the gravity. So we do respond to the signal. Animals can respond to the signals more frequently, more visibly, but the plants, they took a lot of time. Similarly, our skins, they carry the sweat gland cells, and these sweat gland cells can respond to the temperatures. If we are living in a hot condition for a longer period of time, the outside environment and temperature is high, we are living in a warmer conditions, In order to cool the body, our sweat gland cell will start producing water. And that water evaporates and causes cooling and keeps our body temperature at 37 degrees centigrade. That's the one way. So, and the last but not the least, living things can reproduce. They reproduce in different ways. Most of the methods of reproduction are called as sexual reproduction, in which there are distinct genders are out there. But some organisms which are simpler, they are not required to be separated in genders. In those organisms, the male and female sex organs are present in one animal, and one animal is sufficient to produce the next generation. Even more simpler version of life, even the male and female separate sex organs were not even there. So they can divide without having a distinct gender. And this such type of reproduction is called as asexual reproduction. Okay. And if you have any question, just feel free to ask. I will going to answer as well. So the cells, they are supposed to grow. When the cells grow, more cells will able to generate bigger structures, which we can see from the seed to the tree. That means the growth, and that growth is ultimately executed by the cells at a cellular level, because the cells are dividing. They are dividing and producing more cells. Even the bacteria, the picture on the left side, the bacteria will going to divide to produce 2 bacteria. They will going to produce 4 bacteria, and so on. And this is what we call as the DNA, the ultimate code, which is present in every living system, carrying all the information of life. We will talk more about on these things, but I'm stopping right now, and I will going to conclude and talk about the last slide. I want to talk on this slide a little bit more than normal, and I will complete this slide in the next lecture. So that is where I am stopping my formal lecture, and I will going to.
Actually, sir, I would like to add in Izan's talk that procreate cell is actually have a simpler structure. Both are not basically complex. The second one, the procreate, is actually having a simpler structure. So,
क्या बात है? चले आगे? Okay, so it's my turn now. जी Izan, shabash.
Sir, I'm talking about that their functions both have functionalities में complexity है इनके ना structure is some different. मैं complex उनके functions पे बात की है.
Okay, let me fix this thing. Okay, let me fix this thing. I'm sure most of you have understood whatever that stuff was. But let me just try one more time. Okay, remember one thing: by structure and by complexity. In terms of structure and complexity, eukaryotic cells are superior than the prokaryotic cells. Full stop. Okay, absolutely clear about it. Prokaryotic cells are primitive and simpler by structure and by function. Full stop. Now, the next thing is that life is about, there are cells who are like unicellular organisms, and there are multicellular organisms. There are unicellular organisms and there are multicellular organisms. For a unicellular prokaryote, that means an organism is prokaryotic, but it is made up of one cell. A unicellular eukaryote, that means an organism is made up of eukaryotic cells, but it is made up of one cell. Humans, we are multicellular eukaryotes. What that means? We are made up of eukaryotic cells, and we are made up of large number of eukaryotic cells. So there are prokaryotic cells, eukaryotic cells, there are unicellular organisms, there are multicellular organisms. So one thing, it's universal that the eukaryotic cells are complex in structure and in their functions as compared to their counterparts, as compared to their prokaryotic cells. Now, the prokaryotic cells usually unicellular. Okay, they are usually unicellular. So that means they are made up of one cell. So being able to exist as one cell, you need to be like a cell as well as like a organism. That is what I was talking about, the concept of complexity. मुझे इसके लिए एक एनालॉजी बताने दें, हॉस्टल वालों को ये बड़ी मजे से समझ आएगी. When you are living in a home, at your home, the jobs are divided between all the members of the family. जैसे लड़के आमतौर पर रोटियां लेने जाएंगे, नान लेने जाएंगे, या बाहर से खाना लेने जाएंगे, बर्गर से लेने जाएंगे, कुछ चीजें लेने. The jobs are divided कि किसने क्या करना है. हम सिस्टर से क्या एक्सपेक्ट करते हैं, what we expect from mother and father. Think about the person, a boy from the same home who is living in an apartment in Lahore to study in a university. Now that boy is a one cell, but at the same time he needs to run a home as well. उसको एक घर भी चलाना है. So the things he is doing now is little bit more than what he used to do at his home. So just compare the apartment of the boy with his home. The apartment of the boy is one independent structure. उसको बिल आएगा, उसको गैस बिजली के बिल आएंगे, उसको जमा कराने होंगे, उसको रोटियां खुद ही लेने जानी होंगी, किचन खुद ही चलाना पड़ेगा. He needs to execute all the functions of the home जो होने पड़ते हैं उसे अकेले को. That's why the person is required to live a little bit, in a more complex form, complex way. But at home, घर में क्या है? There is a division of labor. He just have to do one thing. उसको किचन देखने की जरूरत नहीं है. But अपार्टमेंट में उसको किचन भी देखना पड़ेगा, लोगों से भी इंटरेक्ट करना पड़ेगा, महल्लेदारों को भी देखना पड़ेगा. He needs to do all these things. So if you ask me, which one is the better and complex structure, the apartment in the city or his home? So I can tell you, his home is a more complex structure, because in that home more people are involved and they have divided their jobs so they can execute the things much better. घर का किचन बेटर होगा अपार्टमेंट के किचन से, definitely. So that is how things. So when a unicellular, एक सेल वाला prokaryote exist करता है, it needs to do something extra as well. But there is no way that it has any comparison with the unicellular eukaryote. अगर उसके सामने एक unicellular eukaryote आएगा, मसलन ये बैक्टीरिया है, this is a bacteria, okay, unicellular prokaryote, ये एक paramecium है. Paramecium is the name of a unicellular eukaryote. ये आमने सामने आएंगे, ये खा जाएगा इसको. So complex, so big, having so many complicated structures. वो इसको, तो इन जब हम comparison करते हैं दो चीजों का, we need to put the things in context to compare things. But that is a thought that when a living thing needs to exist independently, it is required to do extra things. Okay, hope this clarifies the stuff. If anybody wants to talk, you are most welcome. Okay, so wonderful evening clouds. I don't know it's evening clouds or it's morning clouds. I don't know. You can guess. I don't know.
Sir,
I like to believe it is morning. I like to believe it is morning cloud. Ji.
But sir, it is evening because the sun is setting.
Oh, but maybe it's the sun is, maybe, who knows? Sun is rising. Anyway, so
okay. सर वो सेल को फंक्शन करने के लिए न्यूक्लियस रिक्वायर्ड तो नहीं, जरूरी तो नहीं ना?
सेल्स को फंक्शन करने के लिए न्यूक्लियस जरूरी नहीं है. आपका क्वेश्चन का आंसर ये है कि एब्सोल्युटली तो जरूरी नहीं है. आई मीन नॉट इन रिलीजियसली हम इसका आंसर जो है वो यस और नो में नहीं दे सकते. बट
सर आई वुड लाइक टू ऐड,
बट सेल्स को फंक्शन करने के लिए जेनेटिक मटेरियल की जरूरत पड़ती है. बट हाउ दैट जेनेटिक मटेरियल विल एग्जिस्ट इन द सेल? In prokaryotic cells, the genetic material exists in the chamber, in the compartment. But in case of eukaryotic cells, the genetic material exists Let me show you the picture that will make things easier. I'm sure you should be able to see. So in case of prokaryotic cells, the genetic material exists without any boundary. So हमें लगता है there is no nucleus. It's not about nucleus. It's about genetic material. You know, it's about genetic material. In case of eukaryotic cells, the same genetic material is present in a compartment which we call as nucleus. लेकिन मैं आपको एक मुश्किल बात बताता हूँ.
डीएनए की बात कर रहे हैं ना?
जी जी
डीएनए है ना जेनेटिक मटेरियल.
जी जी बिल्कुल बिल्कुल.
Yes.
मैं आपको एक मुश्किल बात बताता हूँ. मैं आपकी बात लेने से पहले मुझे लगा आपने वो वाला सवाल पूछा है और वो सवाल ज्यादा मुश्किल था इस वाले सवाल से. वो क्वेश्चन ये है कि अगर किसी सेल में जेनेटिक मटेरियल ही ना हो, whether it is possible that somebody without nucleus का मतलब मैं समझा कि आप मुझसे पूछ रहे हैं without anything, without genetic material. क्या ये मुमकिन है कि किसी के अंदर न्यूक्लियस और जेनेटिक मटेरियल ही ना हो and still that cell is able to survive? The answer is yes. It is still possible that
defected cell.
No. It is still possible that the cell will exist, but the cell will exist only for a certain period of time and then it will collapse. Because whatever the resources which is there within the cell will survive only with the help of those resources. ये अल्लाह ना करे बड़ी गंदी मिसाल एग्जांपल देने लगा हूँ. एक घर जो है वो एक फादर चलाते हैं मिसाल के तौर पर. ही इज डीलिंग ऑल द थिंग्स प्रेजेंट इन द होम एंड अल्लाह ना करे द फादर इज गॉन, तो वो घर कब तक चलेगा? इट डिपेंड्स कि उन्होंने कितना फंड्स और सामान रेज करके रख दिया आप उस घर के बाकी फैमिली मेंबर्स के लिए. इसकी एग्जांपल है रेड ब्लड सेल्स. Red blood cells, they do not have the nucleus. That is why they cannot survive for a longer period of time and they are required to be dead after 3 months or so. जी.
इसका मतलब उनका प्रोसेस ऑफ रीमेकिंग वो तेज होता होगा ना?
इसका मतलब ये होता है कि उनके पास अनलिमिटेड लाइफ का चांस नहीं है. They have a definite resources. When the resources are consumed, they will be dead.